very good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to all our participants who've joined us from different parts of the globe. Thanks much for having spared your precious and valuable time and having made to this webinar. This is your host, Asif Hussain. I'm a project lead with Doensys, and I specialize in working on Oracle E-Business Suite and Cloud. Gone are those days when people used to think about whether to go to cloud or not. So the thinking has changed dramatically over a period of time. Therefore, the question isn't anymore, should I go or not? Rather, it is when should I go? It's the decision on the timeline that has to be taken. Should it be now or sometime later? Should it be just the dev and the test environments, or even the live production system as well? Or even some customers that we've interacted with are thinking about having just the disaster recovery on the cloud just to start with. Either way, as the saying goes in the English language, all roads lead to Rome. All businesses, I'd say, or rather I'd say a majority of the businesses are heading to the cloud. So to say, ladies and gentlemen, as work from home has become the new normal with the current pandemic, adoption of cloud technology has also become normal, as the concept of cloud has already sunk into a lot of business strategies. Well, friends, let me tell you, today's topic is no different. It is how to secure your ERP with Oracle Risk Management Cloud. Let me assure you folks, it's worth your time, because you wouldn't find this information online, not even, believe me, not even in the Oracle documentation. So all this, whatever you're going to see in this session, is all from the speaker's expertise in the cloud area. Oraclers is a knowledge series from Doensys, where we invite technical experts from the industry across the globe to share their expertise in a discussion that is really interactive and also interesting. Doensys is a software organization, headquartered in Dallas with offshore development centers back here in India. Doensys started in the year 2006. Time since its inception, we Doensys have been serving our huge clientele across the globe, which includes a lot of Fortune 500 customers. We specialize and support our customers in Oracle EBS administration, implementations, upgrades, Apex projects, and we also do extensive projects, with regards to the other areas on cloud as well, be it the AWS or even the Azure for that matter. As we all know, cloud is where the world is heading. Whether we love it or we loathe it, we have to live with it. Doensys, an Oracle partner, has been at the forefront, specializing into the cloud technologies and already having lifted and shifted, so to say, moved and improved a lot of businesses with a gamut of enterprise applications and databases from the on-premise to the clouds, so to say, various clouds, in fact. Also, we have a culture of sharing the knowledge within Doensys. We Doensys believe that knowledge multiplies by sharing. The books that you can see on your screen are the 6 books, or in fact 7 books, which have been authored by the experts of Doensys. So then, friends, having set the foundation for this webinar, let me take this wonderful opportunity in introducing Saran Alagirisamy. He is very fondly known in the industry as Saran. Can we move on to the next slide, please?
Yeah. It's on the next slide.
Saran has assisted many clients in the development and implementation of custom and packaged applications, such as the Oracle E-Business Suite on the cloud, Oracle Enterprise Portfolio Management, Oracle Analytics. He's been in the industry for more than 2 decades in various domains. He's an expert in the transportation, finance, manufacturing, logistics, communication, and also the healthcare sector as well. He is also someone who provides strategic direction to the senior management about Oracle technology, and also works in has been working in the capacity of the ERP Manager, the solution architect, the Onsite Lead, the Techno functional consultant across various engagements. I could see a few more folks joining in. For those who just joined in, a very warm welcome to Oraclers. as I already told you, Oracle is a knowledge webinar series, from Doences, where we share knowledge. We have experts from around the globe talking about various concepts in the field of technology. So, just to let you know, you guys haven't missed much. We've just got started. In this session, Saran will also discuss the lessons learned from the recent implementation that he's done. And in case if you guys have any questions, please feel free to put them in the chat window. We'll have a few minutes at the end where we'll take up your questions. Well, ladies and gentlemen, without much ado, let me hand it over to Saran. Saran, it's over to you.
Thank you, Asif. Thanks for the wonderful introduction and brief about the company, Doences. What a good job you have been doing around the world. So thanks a lot. Let's get started. We are going to talk about, like as Asif introduced, that the topic of the day is basically how we are going to secure your ERP system using Oracle Risk Management Cloud. Oracle Risk Management Cloud is kind of a new platform. Not a whole lot of companies that have been using Oracle has taken advantage of yet. So it's a kind of a upcoming module where a lot of clients have shown interest recently, and a lot of them are implementing it. And we are going to go a little bit deep dive into the product and talk about what it has to offer and what kind of customers can benefit from this tool, and basically all the functionalities and features that are very high level. And as well as at the end of the session, we'll answer some of the questions from you. So that's the plan for today. Number one, let's talk about what Oracle Risk Management is. Oracle Risk Management is a module that you implement along with your Oracle ERP Cloud. It comes with a lot of different features, but it has three different modules within the Oracle Risk Management. Number one is advanced access control, advanced financial controls, and financial reporting compliance. These are all called AAC, AFC, FRC. And we are going to go deep into all those three modules. But at a high level, what risk management can do for your company is basically it can assess your business risk, and then you can also put in a lot of, you can enforce controls, you can monitor the processes, and make sure those risks are mitigated. And if there is a risk that has already happened, then you can come up with a plan to mitigate it or avoid that in future. And also continuously track all your financial transaction security issues inside the system continuously nonstop. So that's a big advantage. Right now, if you look at any company, when they do these kind of activities, they do outside the system. It takes a lot of time and effort and a lot of outside help, and as well as a lot of consulting time to get that going. But this tool minimizes all those efforts and time, and it manages everything in one central repository, so that the whole company can streamline the complete process right from the beginning of the implementation of the project, and then ongoing monitoring and tracking. You can do all that within the tool. That is risk management. So it also helps with your compliance obligations with the government as well as other industries, such as Sarbanes-Oxley, GDPR in various parts of the world. We have several legislations. All of that, all of the requirements and compliance for those legislations can be incorporated within this tool, and you can. That's the main primary use of this tool. So basically, you can identify all your risks and monitor them, track them. You can avoid risk if you can. If it happens, you can put in controls to mitigate them in future. All kinds of things are available within this tool. So when it comes to Oracle Risk Management, right? So basically, it does a lot of things for you. The key things are basically to do your internal audit and continue certifications for every quarter as required by the law now in most of the countries. And then you can also continuously monitor your financial transactions and process transactions, configuration changes, all those things continuously nonstop inside your system. That's the biggest advantage, because as far as I know, there's not a single tool in the market that can do that for you. So you have multiple tools. I have put some examples on the slide, like Metric Stream, Open Pages from IBM, BWise. They can do compliance reporting for Sarbanes-Oxley, things like that. And then there are other companies that have developed tools like Causes and Savient, Abzen to put in the controls, advanced controls inside the system to monitor your transactions. But those are all individual applications you have to buy individually from different vendors, and managing them and setting them up in your system to run together is like really complicated process. And there's not a single tool that can give what Oracle Risk Management is offering you, where it can do all of these activities in a single platform right inside your ERP system. That is the biggest advantage of Oracle Risk Management tool. So instead of buying multiple tools from multiple different vendors, you can put a single module inside your Oracle ERP Cloud, and you can completely automate most of these activities which are happening outside the system usually. So these are the three modules we talked about earlier. One is the advanced access control. What advanced access control can do that is basically it can continuously monitor all your access policies in Oracle ERP, supply chain management, or HCM modules. It supports almost all the modules inside cloud platform. And then you can also identify violations. Let's say you have a policy that you don't want a person to have access to create suppliers as well as create invoices together, right? One person should not have that access. Then you can put in a control inside this tool. You can build a model that can scan for those kind of violations and then report to you even before the violation can happen. Because when you, let's say you onboard a new employee today, and then you're going to give him a lot of different roles, and a couple of the roles are conflicting. Let's say the person got a role that can allow him to set up supplier, also another role through which he can create invoices, which is a violation kind of. So for those kind of violations, the tool can, as soon as you set up the person with the different roles, it can scan it and then find out that there's a potential violation, and then it can report that to you. And then either you can take action by removing certain roles that he's not supposed to have, and then let him have the necessary functions that he can that will allow him to do his job. Okay, that's what advanced access control is all about. And also it can take care of the insider threats, like people are doing increasing credit limits without telling anyone. Those kind of things you can monitor, because let's say I'm a user in AR, and I want to do a favor to a company, and I just increase their credit limit without telling anyone, right? So those kind of setup changes, configuration changes can be monitored continuously 24/7 if you want. You can build models, and that can track any configuration changes done by a particular user repetitively, or if they temporarily increase the limit and then next day they change it back to the old limit, then it can capture all those things actually in the system and then raise it as an incident, and then it can automatically alert via email to the person who is in charge of the system. So that's another proactive thing that the system can do it for you. And also fraud. And I know that fraud can happen in any company. According to a recent survey, every company at least has some kind of fraud costing them 1 to 1.5 million, and all the recovery charges and action to be taken to avoid all those issues. Then it costs them like an average of 1.5 million per year. So that is a thing that you can avoid it by using these kind of tools in place, so that you don't have to go through the cycle of recovery, collection, all those things in future. So the tool continuously monitor your transactions so that this kind of fraud cannot happen, or even if it happens, it can identify before things get worse. For example, if somebody created a payment for a vendor, unauthorized payment for a vendor, then you can scan it and then capture it before the check is sent to them. Okay, and that way it's effectively stopped before the fraud happens. And then it can do the security analysis for you. Let's say you're building a new role for your company, and then it makes sure that it doesn't have any conflicts automatically. We'll look into that much more in detail in the next few slides. Advanced financial control is the next module within Oracle Risk Management. It's when I say module, it's not just a specific area of functionality within the tool. It's not a separate module. The module is Oracle Risk Management still, but these are the different individual areas within the tool where we do different things. The first one was to advanced access control is looks after all your access, role, security violations, the SOD violations, things like that. And then the advanced financial controls is exclusively focused on financial transactions that are happening in your system. So in Oracle ERP, you do a lot of transactions, financial transactions. You pay vendors, create vendors, you create customers, receive payments. Employees submit their expenses, you pay for them. All those things can happen within the tool, and then within ERP, and then those financial transactions are constantly flowing across your system. And those transactions we can continuously monitor to stop cash leakage, or if there is a policy violation in expense report submission or internal violation of policies. Those kind of things you can continuously track and monitor, and then mitigate the risk, and also stop the transaction if required, things like that. They're all they can all be done inside the tool in a very automatic way. What it does is, once you deploy this tool, then you set up all these models, and they're going to use continuously behind the scenes, and they continuously look for these kind of transactions which break the rules. So they will immediately report to you if there is any breakage of the rule. If there is a violation, you'll get an alert as soon as possible, and then you can act on it. And then it can also help you to how to fine tune the policies and how to fine tune the controls, so that it doesn't these kind of issues cannot happen again in future. So that also the system does for you in a very visualized way, where it can show you, let's say, if you have a issue, and you can analyze it graphically or with a lot of different data from different places, and you can collectively take a easy decision to enforce the policies in a better way. And then financial reporting compliance is the last one, where this is just a digitization of your SOX controls, basically. So you do a lot of reporting for SOX and related activities. You do go through the audits every quarter. All that can be automated instead of doing outside the system in Excel sheets and emailing people, asking for evidence, things like that. You can do it everything inside the tool, and it comes with a fantastic dashboards where you can track how much progress you're making, what is the deadline, when you're supposed to certify, and how many things are pending, things like that. You can look at it in a single screen, and then it allows you to continuously track those and make sure that compliance happens within the time, and then you can generate all the reports that you need. So that's what a financial reporting compliance does for you. So it does all the audit test plans, evidence collection, things like that inside the tool. So these are at a high level, these are the three different areas within the tool that we're going to talk about today. The first thing, let's go a little bit deeper into advanced access controls. Advanced access controls, we talked about at a high level, that it can monitor all your access issues and access policies inside Oracle ERP, and then continuously track and monitor any changes to that. Right? Let's say at the beginning of the project, you're implementing Oracle ERP, and then you're building, in Oracle Cloud ERP, everything is based on privileges and roles that you assign to users. And it's your job to make sure that they're not conflicting, right? Like as we talked about earlier, like one of the examples we talked about was like setting up suppliers and creating payments. It cannot be, it should not be done by a single person, right? Usually in a very secure environment, what they do is like they don't want a single person to have a end-to-end transaction capability. For example, he cannot set up suppliers, he cannot create invoices and also authorize payment and generate payments. That cannot be done by a single person. So for SOX compliance, we make them into multiple processes, and everything is controlled by different people, so that there's not a single person who can do all of that. So that's the goal of this AAC tool. So AAC, initially, it helps you with multiple things. One is when you set up initial role, let's say you're building a custom role, and you want to make sure that it doesn't have any conflicts. Oracle has built in hundreds of such models and inside the tool, and then they're all available to you. You can deploy them, and when you deploy them, if you build a custom tool, custom role, and then test it, you can also test the role to see if it violates any of those policies or controls that you have put in place, and then it immediately reports to you those kind of violations. So you can modify the custom role and remove all the violations so that the new role is SOX compliant as well as error free, so that you can take it to your production and deploy that particular role. So for that kind of building your role and testing them out, AAC comes in handy. It allows you to do that. And also, once you deploy that, and you can also continuously monitor the role. Like let's say if you're doing only validating one particular role, but let's say you're having a new user and you're giving multiple roles to them, you can also run a policy check on that process to see that the roles that you're giving the employees are not conflicting with each other, or it's not giving any extra access that he does not need to have in the system. So that also can be done by AAC actually. So that way it can allow it can continuously make sure that people don't have the powers inside the tool to do any kind of fraud or any kind of policy violations. So that's the main use of this AAC actually. So how is AAC useful in a company is basically it allows you to, from the beginning of the project itself, when you onboard your security team, you definitely have to start implementing this tool so that whenever they design roles and privileges and come up with the security design, it can validate those security design to tell you whether it breaks any SOX rules or anything like that, because Oracle has all these pre-built models that are available in the system that can track and monitor these changes, the roles that you're building, the access the level that you're providing to every user inside the company. It can monitor all of that actually. And then it can accelerate your security deployment, right? So if you talk about Oracle Cloud ERP, you have hundreds of thousands of privileges even. And then those privileges are very minute, and it's very hard for you to track them individually. So this tool, if you, let's say you don't have this tool, right, Oracle Risk Management tool, then you are doing that outside the system, right? You have to look into each and every role that you build in the system and make sure that they're not like conflicting with the rules. Okay, so for that, it'll take you a lot of time if you do it outside the system manually using spreadsheets. Somebody has to go through them, and the person has to really understand how the whole system works, because they have to know how each and every privilege works and what each and every privilege can give that person. So that's really hard thing to do. But if you use Oracle Risk Management, it completely automates the process. You just build the rule and then run the processes required to import the rule and do the analysis, and then it'll immediately report to you a list of violations that particular role is bringing into the system. So that's a completely automated way of building new roles. And then it also audits access privileges. If somebody's changing access levels, somebody's giving access levels more than what that person is required, or if, let's say, for your operational need, if you have to give a particular person a temporary access to a particular privilege, and you give that for a day and then you take it out, right? And then when you do that, in let's say that person does the change for the intended change that he's supposed to do, but also he does few things that you don't know, then Oracle has a way to monitor all those changes as well. So we have something that all the configurations inside the system, Oracle has built models that can monitor the configuration changes. Let's say you change adjustment limit in AR, or if you change credit limit for a customer, things like that, those can be monitored as well. So it gives you a continuous monitoring of all your configuration changes inside the system nonstop. So that's another big advantage. Like, let's say you give that person extra access for a day, and then he does, instead of doing one thing, he does multiple things. Then those things will be reported and captured in other models, and they will be reported as incidents. So that's a even bigger advantage for you, because that can also prevent a lot of fraud and policy violations. So those are the major use cases for using this particular advanced access control. Okay, so I know we talked enough about the basics. Let's go through quickly how this whole process is set up usually. Advanced access control, you initially create models and access results. So models are basically, Oracle has hundreds of pre-built models available to you to monitor all the known policies in general policies adopted by each and every company. And then those models, you can pick and choose what you want to deploy, because some companies don't want to do too much of monitoring on certain minor things, so they can ignore those models, and then all other models they can just import and deploy. It takes like 10 minutes to deploy. It's pretty quick process. This module is pretty easy to implement. It doesn't take a lot of time. So those models are already available to you. You just import them, and then you run those models initially, and it reports, here it says, right, it reports excessive access and all the violations, everything it has found in the system that you have configured. Then you can mitigate them, right, either by removing the roles or modifying the roles, all those things. Then you convert those models into controls. The controls are the ones that run every month, every week, or however often you want, and then they continuously monitor all these changes, right? So you run the control analysis periodically, then it generates list of incidents, whichever violations happened in the system which are breaking those controls, and then it reports them, and then in a dashboard, and also it can send alerts if you want. those incidents can be managed. Somebody has to act on the incident. Incidents get assigned to a particular process business owner, and then they have to act on it as quickly as possible. And then you can either make configuration changes. You can adjust the configuration to mitigate those incidents, or you can put compensating transaction control. For some example is basically you have to give a person, some person to change the access limits or credit limit, things like that, right? For that person, we will still let him have the access to do that, but also we'll put in a control, compensating transaction control that will monitor how often the credit limits are getting changed, right? If it is changing like constantly more than prescribed amount, then we can report that as also incident. So there are multiple ways to address incidents that also happens inside the system. And then at the end, you report all the incidents results to managers and auditors. They can take action on it. So these are the pre-built models available. Some of the examples, it's not all of them, it doesn't cover all of them. There are like hundreds of models are available covering 1,000. I think the last count is 1,300 data points inside Oracle it can monitor. So these are some of the pre-built models that are available to you. For example, if a person can enter a journal, right, and they should not have access to set up general ledger, right? So then that's a kind of a policy violation. So this model will monitor for that actually. In case if somebody breaks that rule, like a person gets access to make GL configuration changes, as well as if they have access to enter journal, then that is a violation. And similarly, post journal entry, and they can do set up GL daily rates or something like that, right? That can also be a policy violation in your company. If you want to deploy that model, then you can deploy it. But if you don't want to deploy this particular model, you can avoid them. There are hundreds of models available, so you have to, at the beginning of the project, you usually go through and go through all of the available models and pick which are ones that you want to deploy. And then more models in other subject areas, like other modules, like procurement. For example, here we have one, create suppliers and approve payables invoices, or create payments. That's a kind of a policy violation, right, according to SOX. So you don't allow that to happen. And then if in security, if you are creating the role, then you should not be the one assigning the role to a user, things like that. So these are all the pre-built models that Oracle has built, and then that run in the background. So this is the screen where you import those models in it comes as XML files. You download them, and then you can go through one by one and pick whichever you want to implement. You just flag those and then just import it. It'll import and configure those models for you. And then if you look at the individual model, if you try to edit it, this is how it looks like. Basically, it says create suppliers and then also create purchase orders, right? That's a violation. So you can modify. There are a lot of filter conditions you can use and modify the Oracle provided model. You don't have to use as is. You can update the model also. And then if you edit the model, this is how the edit screen looks like. So you can change certain conditions within the model. You can add extra filters, things like that. And then add access conditions. Yeah, same thing. If you want to further fine tune the model, you can do all these screens. And then at the end, when you deploy that model, and then it runs by collecting all your data from Oracle ERP system, and then it reports any violations for those models. For example, create suppliers and create payable invoices. That's a model that we deployed as a control. And then now these are the violations. So it's reporting that this person, Matthew, has access to create supplier as well as create payable invoices, which is a violation. So either you can then work on the mitigation plan, either to revoke that particular access, one of the access, either create supplier or create payments, and then assign it to another person, things like that. Actually. And then it also gives you remediation options, how you can look at the person's roles, and you can edit that particular role. Let's say if a single role has both functions, then you can directly edit the role here and then redeploy it. Actually, that's another option for you. It's a graphical interface, so it's very easy to edit and deploy the rules, actually, the roles. And then you can, once the models, you fine tune the models and make sure there are no basic issues, then you can deploy them as controls to run them on a periodic basis, every month, every week. Just like that, you can follow a schedule, and then it collects proactively all the data from ERP and then reports any violations or incidents, we call them, to all the corresponding managers or auditors, and then they can take action on those. And yeah, when you get a list of incidents, this is how the screen looks like. You can delete and then sorry, you can edit and then you can look into it, and it shows what's the status right now. It's under remediation, or it says remediate. That means somebody has to work on it. It assigns a user based on the system configuration. It finds a corresponding process owner, and then it automatically assigns to them. And then when you build a role, it can also simulate, let's say you have a violation in a role, single role has two privileges that are conflicting, then it shows the screen where you can simulate the results. Actually, for example, if you have that issue, then it shows that the current violation is basically 2,434, and then you remove this particular access point, right? Supplier master duty. You remove that privilege from that role. Then it tells you after you remove that, what will be the remaining incidents. So it says it goes significantly down, 1,700 now, right? So those kind of simulation you can do within the tool. So instead of doing this in the Excel or outside the system, which is really, really time consuming, this can be done very quickly here. And then you have reporting. That reports will, you can generate reports. Oracle has very good number of built-in reports that you can run, that can extract into Excel, and then you can share it with other people if you want to. But sharing the data inside the tool is more optimal, where you can resolve and act on it within the system. But you can still run reports if you want to. And then when you build the implemented solution, this is how it looks like. There are multiple different people play a role in the implementation. Admin is the person who is in charge of the Oracle Risk Management admin. That's a person that should be separate from business users. That person will basically set up this module and all the basic configuration, scheduling jobs, things like that. And then you have your company will have an internal auditor and a process owner. Process owner is basically the your AR lead or AP lead, the person who leads those department. They will be the process owner. And then the business analysts are people who work under them. So basically, initially internal auditor and then the process owner will sit together and gather all the configuration data, and then they'll talk to the admin and give them guideline on how to implement the system. They do the implementation, and then you pick and choose, and you work with the business analyst will be the one working with the process owner, and then importing all the models, and then all three of them together, they deploy the models, test and refine the models, change the models if required, and then finally review the results and remediate. That is responsibility of the internal auditor and the process owner. Then finally, the models are deployed as controls. Once it is deployed as control, then it runs automatically on a periodic schedule. That scheduling is responsibility of the administrator of the system, who schedules all the synchronization jobs to look at all the transactions and the access controls inside the system and report any violations, things like that. So once the incidents are generated, any violations, then they will be sent as a they're available in the dashboard, also sent as an alert to the internal auditor as well as the process owner. They will work on the remediation plan. So then finally, once all the remediation is done, then it generates a report, final report for the internal auditor that they can take it to the external auditors. So this is how the implementation plan looks like. So will financial controls, whatever we have seen for the AAC applies same things to financial controls. We'll look at only the differences between that and here is basically what you're monitoring. In AAC, you're monitoring only the access level stuff, right? What kind of roles and privileges, any SOX violations, person having too much access, people having conflicting access, things like that. That was AAC. In AFC, we are going to look at specifically financial transactions, right? So we are going to monitor all the financial transactions for fraud and policy violations. For example, let's say you have an employee who gets per diem when he's traveling. Per diem covers all your meals and expenses in a day, but also he submits a meal claim, right? That is a violation. So you can put in a model that looks for expense reports which have used a per diem in a day and then also meal expense on the same day, then that's a violation. So these models that you deploy that can capture those kind of violations and report them as incidents. So that's what AFC does. Compared to AAC, AFC is almost similar and it does the same thing. But only thing is this purely focus on the financial controls. So one of the example I gave you was monitoring those expense reports, right? So Oracle provides hundreds of pre-built models to look for what we have to look for and what we have to analyze on. But also you can build your own custom model. The one I just told you is a custom model that I developed for a recent client where they want to monitor if people are using per diem and expenses on the same meal expense on the same day, then that's a violation. So for that, we built a custom model and deployed it so that it can be captured at any time. So they also go through the same process like we saw in AAC. You import Oracle built models and then deploy them and then configure the model. So let's say one of the thing is basically there are multiple models. Let's look at some of the models here. Yeah, these are the delivered business object. So basically, business object is the basis of your model, right? Business object is every business object within the system, like payable, invoice, payment, supplier, customer. They are all business objects, and then you can track actions on them. Like let's say your supplier, if you're changing something on the supplier, then that business object is changing, right? That can Oracle can identify that and track it, and all those models we talked about previously that can be financial control models also can go through the same thing where you can go and edit the model and add more filter conditions. Let's say you put in a model to monitor transactions, adjustments in the system. People are creating huge adjustments on your bills, then you can track them. But let's say you want to not look at any changes less than $100, right? That will not be in the configured model. So you have to go and edit the model and add another condition saying, yeah, I don't want to look at any adjustments less than $25 or $100. Come up with a limit, and then you put that in the model. Then the model will ignore those transactions, look for only higher limit models, actually. So that's what you do on these screens, where you can fine tune the model and change the attributes, add filter conditions, things like that. Then once it is deployed, for example, we have a control for identifying duplicate invoice entries. So the duplicate invoice entries are basically, let's say you have an invoice and you have another invoice that looks exactly like that based on certain kind of criteria, then you can report on them as well. So that's a model that Oracle has, and you can deploy that. So if you look at the screen where it's reporting these, so for example, whichever is in the highlighted row is a duplicate of the previous row. For example, if you look at here, this particular invoice, amount, supplier, everything is exactly matching, and you have a duplicate. So in that case, then maybe there's one particular field is different, but all other fields are same. Then Oracle can capture those kind of violations, and it can report to process owner. So and also you have you can do, once the models are finalized, you deploy them as controllers we talked about earlier. Here, these are some of the examples, right? Identify purchase orders that are backdated purchase orders. Identify duplicate invoice entries. There are 100 plus in every category that you can deploy. So once you initially deploy and run through a trial run, and let's say it reports like 20,000 issues, right? That's not good. You don't have time to go through 20,000 issues. So instead, what you'll do is you'll fine tune the model. That's where you'll spend a lot of your time, where you'll tune the model so that it doesn't report all the smaller violations. You're looking at really a big picture of big violations in the company. Then you can fine tune the model by modifying the model and redeploy them. Then you'll get a new different set of results that you can easily track and monitor. And when you like just like in the AAC, AFC also generates all these incidents and then send them alerts to business owners or auditors. And also every incident has to be worked upon. So here it says it's assigned status. Then they'll go and make common change. Then change the status and say what remediation plan is put on for this particular incident. And to avoid that in future, you will update all this and then save it. It goes in the report to the auditors actually. So this is how you generate reports. Oracle has, as I told you, pre-built reports that can give you the data extracted in Excel, and then you can forward that to your auditors actually. And here also we go through the same process that we already talked about in the AAC, so we don't want to go through the same thing. So exactly, you gather configuration data, admin configures it, and then you import the pre-built models, test and refine the model, review the results, deploy them as controls, run the controls on a schedule, and then it reports all the incidents, and you have to remediate them, and then you finally get an incident report. And then the last the area inside the RMC is basically financial reporting compliance. So here it's just it doesn't really actively look at your transactions or system changes inside your system, but this kind of a high level digitized platform to track your SOX compliance and all those things actually is instead of doing that outside in Excel. Let's say you want to build a SOX report at the end of the quarter, right? If you go with a third-party consulting company, they charge like $50,000 per quarter actually to build the SOX report. which is really big expense. Instead, the system can do it here inside the system for you with all the pre-built models and everything. It can completely automate the whole process, where it's kind of a centralized platform where you can track all your audit test plans, collect your evidences and Excel attachments or Word documents. You can attach them, and then you can track the issue all the way to the closure, right? Then each and every business owner will go through their area and then go through their test plans and make sure all the test plans have successfully passed. And then they attach the evidence and then they close the issue. And then at the end of the quarter, then you can easily generate a SOX report in the system instead of doing it outside the system, which can cost you a lot more hours. If you do it in the email and tracking emails, attachments, a huge headache actually. So instead, you can automate the whole thing inside the tool, which is much more easier to control and much more effective and cost saving, time savings. You'll get into a lot of those. You'll get a lot of those benefits from the tool itself instead of doing it outside or using with third-party consulting companies. So that's the biggest advantage of financial reporting compliance. And then you get a nice dashboards to show you all the things that are currently going on in your RMC. For example, it can tell you SOX certificate, financial reporting compliance. It has a tile. It shows how many controls have been already validated and approved, and how much is pending. So it says here you have 2 days, but you're almost like 95% here. So you have a few more audit plans that you have to be approved. You have to approve and close before the next 2 days. And pending incidents, it shows how many incidents are pending to be reviewed. There are 25. All that it can give you in a single dashboard. So if you're a high-level official like VP or at a higher level, then you can come into this dashboard and see where you are in your SOX audit. And if there are any issue, then you can work with the individual business owner to address them quickly so that everything is streamlined. And then if you drill down on those tiles, it can show you the details actually. Certifications not started, for example, it shows Philip Kent has not certified. AP entries are valid and properly approved. Further that, there's a test plan, audit test plan that you have to go through and approve. The business owner has not done that yet, so that's what it's highlighting and showing here. And then when you in the financial controls, you have this kind of screens where you go through the audit plan for that particular issue. For example, here the issue is AP entries are valid and properly approved, and operational assessment, right? So this is a kind of operational assessment that you have to do every quarter. So when you do that, like you have a screen, and then here they come to this particular test plan, and then they have these steps at the bottom that they have to go through. And then once they go through, then attach the evidence in the Excel sheet or Word document here. And then they'll put some comments, and then they say they approve the audit plan. The audit plan is passed the test, and then they put that in this screen, and then save and close. Then all these individual business owners, when they do these kind of tasks, then they all roll up to the dashboard, and that's where the auditors or higher level people in the management can look at that and to understand where their audit plan is as of now. So yeah, it shows the results. Total sample size. You have a sample size you can run. You can pick and choose your sample size, and then based on that, it can show you how many samples are outstanding, how many you have to go through still, things like that. You can track them very closely. Yeah, same thing, much more details on that. And yeah, by business area, if you want to see where the expense fraud, there are 7 incidents, and procure to pay, there are 8 incidents like that. If you want to drill down, you can drill down on these dashboards to get to even up to the level of a single incident if you want to. So if you drill down, this is where it goes and shows by mod control, how many violations are there. And you can drill down. If you click on that number 8, it can drill down those individual incidents to make up that number 8. So this is how you drill down to that particular issue. So I think we are almost near the end, so I'll take another 5 more minutes to quickly talk about some technical things. So Oracle has a screen where you can go and look at new features, like Oracle, just like any other Oracle ERP module. Oracle comes up with new features every quarter along with the quarterly releases, and they keep adding new models. They bring a lot of other enhancements every quarter. So those are the things that you can look at in this web page. So this is the, for example, if you want to look at all the 21C, that is the most recent one, all the new changes, then you can look at this. What are the new features that are coming in this particular release? You can go through one by one. You usually see a lot of new models and things like that. They change some of the system functionalities. So those are the things that you can look at, review in this page. And then Oracle also gives you integration options with Oracle Risk Management. Let's say you have a for financial reporting compliance, right? You have you have other systems in your company that you want to monitor and track. You can bring in all that data into this into Oracle Risk Management using all these integration options using REST APIs mostly. So there are a lot of REST APIs available. All of them are documented clearly in the Oracle also adds. Oracle also adds more REST APIs, as in like every year they add few. So we have all these REST APIs that are available here. So you can kick off synchronization jobs using a REST API. You can export all the incidents. You can mass close incidents. You can do a lot of things in the using the integrations like REST API calls. So let's say you have an issue where you converted thousands of invoices. They all came to the system suddenly, and then all of them are reporting some kind of violation. You don't have time to go through all those 10,000 individually, right? So for that, what you can do is you can do a mass update saying that you don't want to look at those. You can just go and close those incidents automatically using a REST API, which is much easier to do than the front end. And then you can run SOD simulations using REST APIs. You can do the risk management data synchronization jobs. Those are the jobs that read all your financial transactions and then scan for any violations and then bring that into the incident level database. So those kind of jobs can also be kicked off using REST API. So those are the options that you have for integrating, just like any other Oracle module, you can integrate with other third-party systems. And then Oracle has as I mentioned earlier, Oracle Risk Management module has a very good reporting system already in place. They have a lot of pre-built reports available to you. And then on top of that, Oracle also, many of you are familiar, if you're a technical, you know that OTBI is embedded inside the Oracle Cloud ERP, where you can build your own reports by just dragging and dropping columns instead of knowing the SQL to go to individual table level. You can just at a high level look at all these pre-built views, and then from there you can pick and choose and columns and build reports. So for that, for RMC, Oracle has these 5 subject areas. Financial reporting compliance has the first 2 subject areas: compliance real time and assessment results real time. And then for the access controls, financial as well as the access controls, they have 3. Advanced financial controls real time, advanced access control real time, and access certification real time. So those are the subject areas where you can go and build your own reports if required. So that's the another option for you if you are not if you're not happy with all the pre-packaged reports that you want to build some custom reports. You can either do it in BA Publisher or use these OTBI subject areas to build your own reports. So it's not complicated. These OTBI views are very user friendly. You can easily build a report quickly. Any end users can also do that after a certain amount of training. But RMC is like a tool that anybody can learn pretty quickly. So building these reports also pretty easy. As long as you know some basics, you can start building reports very quickly. And I think we are at the end of the discussion. I think let's move on to Q&A.
Well, absolutely great information, Saran. Thanks for all that. I'm sure the audience have a lot of key takeaways from this session. And also, I could see a few questions in the chat window. Those of you who asked these questions, if you want, you can unmute yourself and ask. Otherwise, I can ask them on your behalf. Okay, let me ask the question. Someone has posted that, does the violation alert gets triggered instantaneously, or does it happen after some time in some frequency? What is the point when this violation trigger happens?
Oh, that's good. Actually, yeah, that's a good question. You can configure that actually, whether you want violations to go in an email or just stay inside the system. You don't want to send an email, or when you want to send the email, when you want to report it. It's all configurable in the system. So those policy violations can be sent as an email immediately, or you can just don't send the email. A user can log in and look at them later, or how often you want to run those incident generation jobs. It's up to you, actually.
Okay. There's another question that's come in. Are there any challenges with performance when these are turned on?
Not really, unless you run like, you don't go crazy about building models that are going to bring back like millions of incidents or something like that, right? That will be a problem. But if your models are finely tuned and they are properly deployed, I don't see performance as an issue. Only thing is like that's why you have to build the model first and do a trial run and to fine tune it. Usually the models as out of the box, they work fine, but sometimes depending, Oracle does not know how much data volume you're going to have, right? How many incidents you are going to have in your system. So that is completely up to you. So you have to tweak the model every time when you deploy a model. So that's up to completely you, and make sure that the model doesn't return too many rows. You have also at a higher level, you have a control. You can say, only bring me first 5,000 rows, things like the 5,000 instance, things like that. You have those configurations available to you. So you can enable those. So if you enable those, then performance should not be an issue.
Absolutely. That makes sense, sir. There's another question which is coming. Is there a way to allow violation setups to be done only after approval? Meaning, when someone having supplier setup is being given invoice creation access, then such access should be given only when approval is obtained.
Yeah, that is the model building, right? The model can be tweaked for that, actually. The model, I think if I remember correctly, the model does that automatically. But in case if the model doesn't cover that, right, then you can tweak the model and say, yeah, only approved incident should be reported, things like that. Yeah, you can make that change in the model.
Okay. There's another question that's come in. Are there any industry or domain specific pre-built models available? Like, already some samples which already exist.
Yeah, Oracle is still a work in progress. As of now, they have built a lot of models that cover almost in any industry. Most of these processes are almost common. The cases where industry specific cases are really few. Based on my experience, I've done this in three projects now. Most of the time we use the models that Oracle provided, but sometimes we have to build the model that doesn't cover specific industry specific cases that Oracle cannot foresee. So those kind of things, yeah, that'll be very minimal compared to the Oracle built model that you're going to deploy. Those kind of exceptions are very few usually. But Oracle is continuously working. They're releasing new models every quarter, so you'll get some of those addressed in future.
Okay, that sounds good. And Saran, we do understand the benefits of using this particular product, but there's one question, like how long does it usually take to implement RMC?
Very good question, Asif. Yeah, it's usually it's not like AR or AP. It's going to take a lot of time to implement. It's pretty quick compared to that. But you have to start when from the beginning. That'll be better when you onboard your security team, right? Like in any ERP project, you're going to onboard a security team to look at all the security design, roles, privileges, and all that, right? Right from that point, you can start. So typically, it takes, in my experience, 3 months to set up and configure and get ready to go on live. It's usually 3 months. It can be a little bit more if your requirements are pretty complex. If your models are going to be complex, you have any industry specific model that you want to build manually from scratch, which is usually low. So I would say it's like 2 to 3 months to implement and go live usually.
Okay, that sounds like a reasonable time, Saran. Yeah. I could see a few more questions. Few more questions coming in. What are those key things to watch out during the implementation of RMC?
Yeah, the key thing is basically you have to do a lot of trial and run, like these controls, right? They are like, that's where you'll end up spending a lot of your time on, where you look at the model and you have to fine tune it because we don't know what kind of transactions you're going to have in your system, right? Oracle builds these models at a high level, and so you have to tweak them and deploy them, right? You don't want to get 10,000, 15,000 incidents per week or per month, right? That'll be too much to work on. So that's what you have to really look at, and really closely watch that, and then make sure that your models are perfect before you deploy them in production, right? If you deploy them. Once you deploy them, you generate all these incidents, then it'll become a headache to close them and go through them and remediate and all that. So it's kind of at the early stage of the project, you should focus on those. That's one of the key things that you'll learn when you implement this tool. Other than that, yeah, user training, there are some things that you can focus on, and that'll help the users, because a lot of people are used to doing the audits outside the system in Excel sheets and talking to other teams, working with external auditors via emails and things like that. It's a kind of a little bit of a culture change for them to have everything inside the tool and work on without talking to people, without writing emails. So that's where you have a little bit of a learning curve that you have to get used to. It's not learning, I would say, but it's kind of a culture thing that you have to learn and start using it, actually.
Sounds good. There's one more question that's come in. Once this risk management is enabled, if we want to switch this off during debugging performance problems or such scenarios for a brief period, is there a way?
Yes. So the controls, you control that, right? Basically, you have the jobs that run behind the scenes on a schedule basis that generate these incidents, run these models, right? You can temporarily suspend them. You can purge even entire data and then restart if you want to. So it's completely up to you. How do you run those jobs? You can, for example, let's say for next 1 month, you don't want to do anything, right? Then you can completely purge all your existing incidents and everything, just shut it down. And then don't run the monitoring jobs or anything like that, data synchronization jobs. And then once your debugging everything is done, then you can turn them back on again. Yeah, that's up to you completely. Yeah, it's doable.
Okay. Any more questions from the audience? Please feel free to ask them. You can unmute yourself and ask the questions, or you can also post it in the chat window. I can ask them. I can ask Saran your questions. Anything else? Okay, it seems like, okay, there's one more question that's come in. Does this work only with the SaaS platforms, or is it, is it also for IaaS and PaaS as well?
Yeah, you can integrate with other platforms, but it works really tightly with Oracle SaaS platforms. But you have integration options to bring in other data from third-party systems and client server-based systems, on-premise systems. You can bring them in, actually. But the tool is designed to work well within the cloud platforms, actually.
Okay, do we have any other question? We can take probably 1 or 2 more questions, because you've got another 2 more minutes to go. Any further questions from the audience? Okay, it seems like there are no more questions. Anyways, thanks so much, Saran, for this wonderful and a thought-provoking session. Appreciate all your efforts, in having spared your precious time and also sharing your knowledge and expertise. I'm very sure that the audience have a lot of key takeaways from the session. And also, special bunch of thanks to all the audience for being a part of this webinar. I request you to like the Doences page on social media channels for the latest on the Oracle platform and also the happenings at Doences. Take care and stay safe. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Asif and Doences, for giving me this opportunity. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.